Hi everyone, this is Lethea from Farmview Creators. Today let's craft the Farmhouse Christmas Interchangeable Sign Insert for the signpost. So I went ahead and I sprayed two of the pieces that have some score lines in them with some top coat that helps the score lines stay visible even as you paint them. And then I am making a little sticky board to hold my pieces in place while I go in with Amy Howard at Home Windsor Gray Stain Gel. I'm using a stain sponge that has a terry cloth covering. I really like these. It's not quite as messy as a baby wipe or a paper towel, and it goes on smoothly. So I'm just rubbing it on and then rubbing off the excess, and then I'm giving it a good dry before I move on to the next steps. On two of the pieces, I am going to go ahead and finish the back side. The hanging piece there with the holes at top, you can see the backside where I have this situated in my home, so I want that to kind of have a finished look to it. So I'm going to give that a good dry also, and then I'll flip it back over, and we're going to go in with my favorite Crackle Medium from FolkArt. This does take a lot of shaking to get it all mixed up. I like to go heavy-handed on it because I prefer large crackles. So I am just smoothing that across, trying to make sure that I have it fairly even and level. And then it's got to dry for an hour. And it does better if you don't force it to dry. So I'm going to make some more sticky boards for the little pieces, and I am putting on pieces that are going to be the same color together. That way I can keep it all straight in my head. So I've got green pieces and red pieces. I am using autumn sage and basil for my greens, and the red barn for my red. For those little pieces with the score lines, another tip is to mix some of your paint with water and then brush it on with your brush parallel to the piece. That's why I was holding it down for that part. It just helps it go on and not cover up those score lines. You will have to go over it a couple more times because it is watered down, but that's no biggie. So I'm just painting all of the pieces that I want to be red, and I'm doing a very thin coat first, and then I'm going to go on to my green while that's drying. I want my first coat to be completely dried before I go in with a second coat. These Couture paints are amazing. They pair so well with the wood kits from the Rust Covered Cottage by Christina. And she also carries them in her shop. So I was hitting those, trying to go with the grain of the wood, and then going back and making sure I smooth it down. Then I watered down some of my green, and I'm hitting those holly pieces because I want the veins in the holly to stay showing. And I'm gonna hit that with a dryer just to make sure that it is fully dry, and then go back with a third coat on those holly berries and a second coat on my words and the little bow. And then I will go on to the green. I do go a little heavier handed with my second coat. And I'm also not as concerned about painting in the direction of the wood grain with that second coat. Hitting the berries for a fourth time because I do want the color to be rich, so it's going to take more layers, but I want those score lines to stay showing. Then hitting my tree and my wreath. I love this autumn sage color. It's just a really pretty light green. Making sure everything is all smooth, and then I'm going to get that holly again. And then give that a dry. And then I'm going to have to do a couple more layers on the holly with the water down, trying to stay parallel with my brush. And I had to make some more water down. hitting those berries again. And I keep going until I get the richness of color that I want. Making sure that I give it a good dry. And now I'm going to go in with Paint Couture Basil on my green pieces and just with a smaller brush add some texture and definition to make it more tree-like. And I did switch brushes. I wasn't happy with how that first brush was working out. So I'm just going through and adding some texture to the tree to make it look more like it is a tree. And then I'm going to hit the wreath as well, just kind of staggering and brushing in V lines that are not connected or anything. And it's not perfect. I'm not trying to be perfect. Anywhere I think it needs a little bit more, I just go back. And now I am tracing those scored veins with that basil. These two colors just complement each other so well. Now I'm going to go and use the end of my brush to add some berries to my wreath. You just dip it in the paint and then dot it straight down, and it does a nice little dot of color. The first time after you dip, it's usually a larger dot and it gets smaller as you go. Sometimes you have to kind of tap it off first. Now I'm going to go in with Buttercream Paint Couture Mineral Acrylic, and I'm going to put some accent dots on my pieces. Again, just dipping the end of the brush into my paint and then using that to make my dots. And I'm just kind of randomly deciding where I want my little 3 dots to go. And going back in, and I did not like some of those dots, so I just wiped them off with my baby wipe and kind of dabbed off a little bit so that I'd have smaller dots since it's very little letters. And then going in and adding some to my holly as well and to my wreath to give it a little pop. And I really thought I was done after the wreath, but I decided to go back in and add some to the tree as well. My son was kind of picking on me about my dots being too even, so I kind of went back and randomly added some more. Also decided I wanted some on the bow, so I'm just adding them along the boughs of the tree. And then I finally decide that I'm done. I just keep going until I feel good about it. Now I'm going to go in with my favorite Debbie's DIY Dark Wax to give it a distressed look. I do keep my brush in a baggie now to keep it from drying out, and I just kind of swirl it in the top of the container lid and pick up a little and buff it out with my fingers as I need to. I'm hitting the edges of everything, and also kind of running it a little bit through as I'm buffing it. You'll see me kind of buff it into the middle of the piece to give it a little aged look. So just hitting all those pieces, reloading whenever it needs to be done. Sometimes it'll be too thick and I'll go back and I'll rub over that to smudge it out. You can also go back and rub it off with a baby wipe, which I will do in a minute because I reloaded and got too much on my brush. And right there it is. Too much. So I'll just go in with a baby wipe and take care of that, and it's perfect. And then I did want to hit the back of the holly because, again, that piece will show where I have this positioned in my home. Getting that dry. I'll only do 1 coat on the back pieces because they're not very evident. Going in with my art glitter glue and gluing the berries onto the holly. I want to make sure I don't get on that straight bar piece because that is what fits down into the base of the signpost. And there is my Crackle Medium all dry. So now I'm gonna hit with that buttercream. I am not using even amounts of paint. I kind of want it to be splotchy and aged looking. In fact, I found that having thicker spots of the paint does a better crackle. So you can already see that it is beginning to crackle there. And I'm gonna hit it with the dryer. I actually had to turn down my heat a little bit because it was bubbling up, but I love how it turned out. And now I'm going to go in and give everything a layer of my favorite top coat, Paint Couture's Dead Flat. It takes out all the shine that may be there from any of the paint colors or the stain. And it doesn't take much. Just a little goes a long way, but I am going to hit all the pieces, make sure that that paint is protected, and then I want to go in and make sure my crackle is protected. I did kind of feel it to make sure that it had cooled down because I did not want to put it on a hot surface. And then I will give that a quick little dry, and then it'll be time for assembly. So I'm gonna kind of see how some of the pieces fit first. I know that this matches up flush with the edges of the hanging piece. The top edge wanted to lift up a little bit, so I did run and grab some of my Dollar Tree clamps and put up there. These are perfect for any time you need them. And then get my tree, and then I'm definitely gonna lay out the words before I start gluing them because I wanted to make sure that I knew exactly how much room I had and trying to get them straight. And then getting those glued down. It doesn't take much of the art glitter glue. It does dry clear, so if any of it kind of runs out on the edges, that's okay because it will not show. I love this joy. It turned out so well. So I'm just trying to evenly position them horizontally and vertically. The wreath does kind of hang out off the edges a little bit, but that's okay because it's still going to fit in the insert. And then there are all three pieces. I absolutely love how it turned out. And then there it is, finished with the signpost. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you have, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you soon.